Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist. Today's date is March 13th, 2026, and this is a continuing series with Solomon Southwick's book, A Solemn Warning Against Freemasonry, addressed to the young men of the United States, 1827. Okay, now, apostate congregation, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I thank you all for joining. I know your time is really valuable. I have a clear message that I'm trying to send. Those of you that are new to the channel know that this is very much a solemn warning against Freemasonry. Okay, it's the title of the book. And if you take into consideration everything that's happening today, right? If you look at the world around 2026 in light of the Epstein files, all of the cultic Masonic stuff that's happening with those, just everything that's going on with Freemasonry in general, and just the pure like sickness of it all, the pedophiliism, the graping, the pizza, the Mormon monarch, the Mormon leaders being on the blood list, all this kind of stuff, right? When you add this stuff all together and you take into consideration the anti-Masonic movement, and they're warning us against all of this stuff that's happening today. And it's pretty phenomenal if you think about it in a historical value, right? The historical value of all of this is fascinating, because the anti-Masonic movement is literally trying to warn us against today. And so this is an ongoing series. This is going to be episode 5, I believe. I think it's episode 5. I can't remember. I don't know. But anyways, we're on page 32. And we are on the second paragraph where we left off on the last episode. So we are reading directly out of Solomon Southwick's book, and comparing notes to Mormonism, and how the stories are just so incredibly parallel, right? The anti-Masonic movement, William Morgan, Joseph Smith, and the anti-Mormon movement are just line in line, right? So as the key to all of this is the LDS ear, the Mormon ear, because the Mormon ear is that cultic aspect, right? I was born and raised a Mormon, so I grew up with all of these stories and all this stuff, and I very well know the Mormon stories, right? And so whenever you get into the anti-Masonic movement, and I'm hearing these stories and these allegories and these rites and these rituals and all this stuff, I'm thinking to myself, yo, they are literally talking about my religion. And then once I hit Solomon Southwick and David Bernard and a few others that are kind of later writers in the anti-Masonic movement, they start naming names. And they start telling you who these people are, right? That these Masons that are kind of trying to overthrow the country, more or less. They're trying to undermine the Constitution of the United States. And that's what the whole anti-Masonic movement was about, right? It was a warning against Freemasonry, the institution, the religious institution called Freemasonry. All right, so let's get into Southwick's book. We're on page 32, and let's go. So it says, before I conclude on this head, it is incumbent upon me to prove the incompatibility of the Masonic obligations with those which every citizen owe to its state. Okay, now the politics, and this is all political. Everything about this is religious and political. Okay, it's a religious institution pretending to be, well, it's a government institution pretending to be a religion. Okay, it's called a pretend religion. It's a government entity that is pretending to be a religion. Okay, they actually refer to it as a pretend religion. Okay, so now the Masonic, with those which every citizen owes to its state, whether the doctrine of expiration be well founded or not, it is certain that every citizen owes faithful allegiance to the laws and constitution of his country so long as he enjoys their protection. That's fair. You know, I mean, I wish we had this kind of countryman pride in the United States today. Because if you start out with William Morgan's book and you come all the way, you watch the series and you come all the way up to here, okay, they're two different series. There's William Morgan, you can go to the playlist and watch them. They're William Morgan and then Solomon Southwick and then David Bernard. And all the literature that's in between there, the countryman pride is just oozes out of these authors in the 1800s, right? And we have lost that today. That is totally gone today. That countryman pride of just, you know, USA, right? Now, stolen land, all that, that's a different conversation. That's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about the anti-Masonic movement. We are coming out of the signing of the Constitution. So that country pride, right? We just got through the Revolutionary War, you know? We beat the Yorks, right? So let's keep going. Rather, the doctrine of expatriation, will be founded or not, it is certain that every citizen owes faithful allegiance to the laws and the constitution of his country, so long as he enjoys their protection. How, then, can any citizen who duly reflects upon his civic obligations and means to preserve them inviolate? So one thing, congregation, is these words are, this is a reprint book, so the words are all messed up. So forgive me if I come across, right? So inviolate, to go into a Masonic lodge and there swear as follows, and then we do a quote. Furthermore, do I promise and swear that I will support the Constitution of the United Grand Lodge of the United States. See the wording in there? I support the Constitution of the Grand Lodge of the United States. Your allegiance is to the lodge first, and then to the United States. You got it? And of the Grand Lodge of this state, right? So your allegiance is to the lodge, under which this lodge is held, and conform to all the bylaws, rules, and regulations of this or any other lodge, of which I may at any time hereafter become a member. Mormons, can anything be more irrational, more repugnant to the moral sense of an honest man and a good citizen than this oath? It must be borne in mind. It must be borne in mind that this is an oath of institution. At this time of taking which the deponent is totally ignorant of the prescriptions of the constitutions and laws which he swears to support. He has not read them. They have not been read to him, nor explained by way of lecture, or in any other shape whatsoever. And yet does he rush thus blindly to the altar of darkness and delusion, and swear to support them. And not only the constitutions and laws already made, but those which may be made thereafter. So you have to agree to laws that aren't even made yet, right? And these constitutions and laws are those of private, secret association, Mormons, and yet without any mental evasion or equivocation, without any reservation of his moral or religious obligations, or the allegiance he owes to the paramount laws of his country. He swears roundly that he will support them, though they may, for aught that he knows, lead him to the commission of treason, murder, or any other felony. Right? I mean, it goes against God and country completely. And so it's really kind of a fascinating thing. I'm going to try something here real fast. No. All right. So it's really kind of a fascinating thing, but all right, let's keep going. Let's see. Okay, and a felony. Our armies swore terribly in Flanders, said Stearns Toby. Okay, Toby is a slang name, okay, said Stearns Toby. But with all their flippancy and proficiency in the art Freemasonry could have taught them a lesson they little dreamed of. The next obligation I shall quote goes still further. For when the old Templar, or wait, I'm sorry, the old Tempter, that's what it says. When the old Tempter is in highlights, and that is a play on Templar, the old Tempter, the old Templar, gets his cable tow about the neck of a subject, there is no knowing whither or to what he will lead him. And I have not the smallest doubt that this obligation is the prolific source of monstrous crimes and corruptions. So the old Tempter, I want you guys to really focus in on that. The old Tempter, he has it highlighted, like italicized, as in like the old Templars, right? The Tempters, the Templars, the Tempters, the Templars. The only letter in that that's changed is the T and the L, Templars. Okay? Among those members of the order, in particular, who are ignorant and vicious, this oath indeed is amply sufficient to make an ignorant man a vicious man, to render him the willing pander and instrument of wickedness. Furthermore, do I promise and swear. Okay, this is another quote. This is another oath, right? Furthermore, do I promise and swear that a master mason's secrets given to me in charge as such, and I knowing him to be such, shall remain as secure and inviolable in my breast as in his own, murder and treason excepted. End quote. Remember, we went over this in Morgan's book. And they left to my own election. If the oath before quoted was shocking to the moral sense of an honest man and a patriot, how much more so is this? If that might be called a leap in the dark into the regions, page 34, into the regions of iniquity, this is an open and undisguised oath of fealty to crime and criminals of the blackest hue, to forgers, counterfeiters, pickpockets, sharpers. Now, a sharper is a cunning person, like a card shark or something like that, right? Google sharpers and Google look that word up. Thieves and highwaymen. I was a highwayman. Little Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash there, the highwayman. I was a highwayman. All right, to all sorts of criminals. In fact, but murderers and traitors. So they won't accept any, like, everything. They're totally against everything except murderers and traitors. And although the right to conceal or expose these is reserved by the deponent, there is not much reason to believe that a thoroughgoing devotee at the altars of Jachin and Boaz would ever exercise it in any way of the exposition. For the man who could conceal or half harbor a thief or a highway robber because he was a master mason would find but little, if any, difficulty in stretching his conscience to embrace the traitor and the murderer. Do you understand? So if murder and stuff like that is accepted anyways, it's not any kind of stretch of the imagination that they're going to stretch the truth. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, it's all bullshit. I am indeed well aware that this embrace has been given, that this stretching of a Masonic conscience has happened, because one of the murderers of Morgan, in his flight from justice, passed through the city of Albany and would have been arrested in it if he had not been warned of his danger and aided to escape by one or more Royal Arch Masons. Where is Joseph Smith's body at? Where is Joseph Smith's body at? But let the wretched outlaw go where he may. The ghost of his hapless victim will rise. The ashes of Morgan will rise again. Apostate congregation. There you have it, right there. That is where I get this from. The ghost of Morgan will rise again. But let the wretched outlaw go where he may. The ghost of his hapless victim will rise. Ever and on to his view and continually agitated by the horrors of a guilty conscience. He may exclaim the language of Milton. Now, this is very small writing, so I'm going to do my best, congregation. And this is a quote from Milton. Me miserable? Which why shall I buy infinite wrath and infinite despair? Which way I fly is hell, myself am hell, and in the lowest depth, a lower deep, still threatening to devour me opens wide, to which the hell I suffer seems a heaven. End quote. That's Milton. I love this writing. This writing is so stunning. We don't have anything like this today, apostate congregation. Nobody writes like this today. To return to the oath, can any faithful citizen deliberately take such an unlawful and wicked oath as I have here transcribed, and know to have been taken by every master mason? Page 35. And if once indiscreetly taken through youth, the inexperience or otherwise, is he not bound to renounce it in the first moment of calm reflection and throw off at once the restraints it imposes? Remember, that's part of the oath in William Morgan's book, right? Virtue, patriotism, morality, and religion all answer in the affirmative, and the soundest principles of law conquer in the same reply. In this opinion, all writers on moral philosophy and jurisprudence are agreed. From the most exalted sages of Greece and Rome down in point of time to the equally great and able ones of the modern Europe and infant America. Infant America. I love that. Infant America. Of the moderns, GR, and then the letter is blotted out, and then TIUS. Grucius, I don't know. Puffendorf. There you go. There's your Puffendorf right there. Puffendorf, and this is an 1827 book, congregation. Hutchinson, Paley, and indeed every writer of any celebrity all agree that unlawful oaths are not binding, but are more honored in the breach than the observance. To quote the precise words of all of these writers, it is not necessary, as you can at any time satisfy your minds by referring to them yourselves. But as Paley, P-A-L-E-Y, is considered as good authority as any of them, attend a moment to what he says. Quote, promises are not binding where the promise is unlawful. There are two cases of this. One, where the unlawfulness is known to the parties at the time of the making of the promise, as where an assassin promises his employer to dispatch his rival or his enemy, a servant to betray his master, a pimp to procure a mistress, of a friend to give his assistance in a scheme of seduction. The parties in these cases are not obliged to perform what the promise requires, because they were under a prior obligation to the contrary, italicized, because they were under a prior obligation to the contrary, from which prior obligation, what is there to discourage them? That promise, their own act indeed, but an obligation from which a man can discharge, page 36, himself by his own act, is no obligation at all. The guilt, therefore, of such promise lies in the making, not in the breaking them. And if, in the interval betwixt the promise and the performance, a man so far recovers his reflection. See yourself in the mirror. As to repent of his engagements, he ought certainly to break through them. Mr. Paley, who is one of the most able and most justly celebrated of British divines and philosophers, has in the passage I have quoted conclusively sworn. See, so now let's stop right there. So now you can look up Paley, you can look up these names, and you can read their works. Okay, and these are people that talk more about the religious institution called Freemasonry, the Church of Masonry. So it's not like this book is the only book. Just in this paragraph, I just gave you 4 or 5 different authors that are also writers, contemporary. You can look them up and you can find their works and you can read their literature. So it's not like this is a one-off thing where it's like, oh, you got one book. No, there's literally hundreds. There are hundreds of books that are talking about this. Okay. Okay, so which every citizen owes to his country, its constitution and laws, to say nothing of his duty to God, but in my humble opinion, to say that the oaths in question are nugatory. In consequence, nugatory is Nugatory, in consequence of a prior and, if you please, a higher obligation, is not saying enough. For to swear to conceal the crimes of any man or set of men must be and is a crime at least as a misdemeanor. Or there is no such thing as reason, much less the perfection of reason. As Blackstone says, there's another name, you can look this stuff up and research these names. As Blackstone says, in law, but to abide by the oath when occasion requires or calls for it, is to become, to all intents and purposes, in a strict legal sense, accessory to such a crime, and justify liable to the punishment decreed for them by the legislature or prescribed by the common law. When we contemplate for a moment the oath before us, we need no longer to wonder or feel the least surprise that so many criminal Masons have heretofore eluded justice. Joseph Smith. That so many have been able to fly effectually from the reaches of legal proceeds, the Mormons, that so many on conviction have been punished so leniently at various times, and that so many, okay, pay attention to that. So many on occasion have been punished so leniently at various times. What are they doing to the pedophiles right now? They're totally like, they just give them a pass and they rebaptize them and you're good to go. It's a den of pedophiles. The Mormon church is literally a den of pedophiles. And that so many who have been sentenced to an adequate punishment have found the means of obtaining pardon and emerging from the confinement without anything like a due expiation of their crimes. We no longer wonder what a wretched like Stephen Arnold, Stephen is spelled with a PH, and then Arnold, a schoolmaker at Otsego County, Otsego County. I would think that would be Oswego, but it's spelled Otsego. Oswego is different. I've been to Oswego, and that's not how you spell Oswego, and it's never been spelled like this. So Otsego County, after being sentenced to death for the murder of an unoffending and innocent little girl. Okay? One of the most cruel and atrocious private murders ever committed in this or any other country, found a host of Freemasons so ready to step forward in his behalf. Stephen Arnold, a schoolmaker of Otsego County, after being sentenced to death for the murder of an unoffending and innocent little girl, one of the most cruel and atrocious private murders ever committed in this or any other country, found a host of Freemasons so ready to step forward in his behalf. That is like right out of the Mormon playbook right there. Totally out of the Mormon playbook. And a Masonic legislature like that with which we are now blessed, quotation or italicized. He's being flippant. Okay, he's not happy. Which now betests and which has refused its aid to bring the murderers of Morgan to light. Do you understand? Morgan is an allegory. That little girl is William Morgan. Ready to mitigate his punishment from death on the gallows. Okay, do you understand? Do you get it? William Morgan is an allegory. Ready to mitigate his punishment from death on the gallows. Okay, so who do you think they would be talking about on the gallows? There's nobody, the William Morgan story has nobody being hung. Nobody gets hanged in the William Morgan ever. There's never no hanging in the so who could they possibly be talking about right here? William Morgan is an allegory to confinement in the state prison for 14 years or for life, and where he died in a short time after, or I doubt not Masonic sympathy for a Masonic murderer would have procured his pardon. If the Masonic oaths, or rather the promissories, the promissory part of them, which I have quoted, be destructive of fealty to the state, Are they not equally or more so of the principles of morality and religion? If indeed the Bible be not a forgery and Christianity a fable, he who takes these oaths runs the most awful of the risks, that of being cast off by his creator in the life to come. Do you understand? Do you get what that just said right there? If indeed the Bible be not a forgery, what is the Book of Mormon? What is the Book of Mormon? Okay. The Bible is not complete. It's wrong. That's why there's another Testament of Jesus Christ, the Book of Mormon. Do you understand that? Do you get that? Right here, he's just tells you. He literally is telling you. Okay? Where'd it go? I lost my place, God damn it. All right. If indeed the Bible be not a forgery and Christianity a fable, he who takes these oaths runs the most awful of all risks, that of being cast off by his creator in the life to come. Do you understand right there what he just said? This is 1827. We are talking about Mormonism. In 1827, Freemasonry is Mormonism. Mormonism created Freemasonry. Mormonism was first. It was a religion called Freemasonry, the Church of Masonry. These are not my words. These are the common words in the day contemporary of what they were using and what they were calling Freemasonry, that me and you call Freemasonry. In the day, 1827, it was called a religious institution. Me and you today call this Mormonism. Freemasonry in the 1800s was Mormonism. Do you understand me? Actually, it's the other way around. Mormonism was Freemasonry. Okay, and especially when we connect with the promises, the blasphemous and horrible penalties attached to their violation. These penalties I shall add as they stand connected respectively with the several oaths of an entered apprentice, a fellow craft, and a master mason. Page 38. Entered apprentice. I want you to think temple ceremonies. Okay? Think temple ceremonies. This is the oath for the entered apprentice. To all which I do most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear, without the least equivocations, mental reservations, or self-evasion of mind in me whatsoever, binding myself under no less penalty than to have my throat cut across, my tongue torn out by the roots, and my body buried in the rough sands of the sea at low water mark, where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours. So help me God. And keep my steadfast in the due performance of the same. And so help me God. So help me God, and keep me steadfast in the due performance of the same. That was the entered apprentice. Now let's go to the fellow craft. This is the fellow craft oath that Solomon Southwick is writing about. To all which, i.e., as above, binding myself under no less penalty than to have my throat, than to have my breast torn open, and my heart and vitals taken from thence, and thrown over my left shoulder, and carried into the valleys of Jehoshaphat, there to become a prey to the wild beasts of the field and vultures of the air. If ever I should prove willfully guilty of violating any part of this my solemn oath or obligation as a fellow craft mason, so help me God, and keep me steadfast in the due performance of the same. That's the fellow craft mason, the master mason, to all which, i.e., as above. So you have the entered apprentice, the fellow craft. All of these oaths pertain as well to the master mason. To all which, i.e., above, as before, binding myself under the no less penalty than to have my body severed in two in the midst and divided to the north and to the south, my bowels burnt to ashes in the center, and the ashes scattered before the four winds of heaven, that there might not be the least track or trace of remembrance remain among men or masons of so vile and perjured a wretch as I should be, were I ever to prove willfully guilty of violating any part of this my solemn oath or obligations of a master mason. So help me God, and keep me steadfast in the due performance of the same. Do you understand? How many of you understand that as your temple rites and rituals and other things that are in Mormonism, those wordings, that same exact wording, right? How many of you recognize that? If these horrible oaths are not unlawful, okay, now we're on page 39. If these horrible oaths are not unlawful and punishable as misdemeanors at least, then every man of common sense must perceive that our laws are extremely defective, right? So I want to explain this right here. So what he's saying is, in the United States of America, you, as an American, you already have an oath. Your oath is to the Constitution of the United States. Your oath is to the laws of the government. Your oath is to, the United States. That is what your oath is to. That is what constitutes a countryman. That is why earlier he said you don't even deserve the name of an American man, because you're taking oaths that go against the oath you have already took as an American citizen. As an American, you take an oath. And Solomon Southwick's entire point is, if you're undermining the constitutional oath with another oath, then purely by default, you should not be an American anymore. That's what he's saying. In 1827, that is literally what he's saying. And he's saying that our laws are defective if something like that is allowed. Look at Mandami right now, right? That dude is mayor of New York. New York, he is a Muslim. His oath, his allegiance is to Islam, not the United States. Okay. Do you understand what Solomon Southwick is saying in 1827? The Freemasons are allowing these criminals and shit like that to be prominent people. And look at what we have today. Look at what we fucking have today. Look at our government today. Solomon Southwick was warning us against all that shit. And look at it today. I mean, he literally just said, if these horrible oaths are not unlawful and punishable as misdemeanors at least, then every man of common sense must perceive that our laws are extremely defective, because the Masonic oath directly undermines the oath of the United States Constitution. What is Mormonism? Mormonism is you take an oath to the church. Your allegiance is to the church. As a Mormon, first and foremost, your allegiance is to the church. This is why in the old days, in the 1800s, in the anti-Mormon literature, they called Joseph Smith the Mormon machine. They call it a pretend Muhammad because it resembles Islam so much. Mormonism and Islam are like hand in hand. They're just alike. It's without all the violence. So if you want a peaceful Islam, you go to Mormonism. Dude, this country is so fucked if we don't, this book is an address to the young men of the United States. If the young men of the United States, if we do not get our shit together, we are going to lose our country. The young men of the United States, right? If we do not get our shit together, we are going to lose our country. Solomon Southwick in 1827 is warning us about legit today. Today. It's the anti-Masonic movement, man. And it is high time the attention of the legislature was bestowed upon the subject. Well, guess what? Here we are in 2026, and they still have not bestowed upon the subject. That's interesting. We should show that to them. In 1827, they are legitimately talking about what we are talking about today. But I maintain these obligations do fairly render all who administer or taken them. Okay, so I skipped. It is high time the attention of the legislature was bestowed upon the subject. 1827. It's 2026. And we still have not bestowed upon the subject. But I maintain that these obligations do fairly render all who administer or take them liable to indictment and conviction for misdemeanor. This is part of the anti-Masonic. This is what this was one of the platforms that the anti-Masonic political movement stood for, right? I maintain that these obligations do fairly render. So if your allegiance is to something other than the country of the United States, right? And you take one of these oaths, that's a misdemeanor. That should be at the least be considered a misdemeanor, if not felony. Constructive felony, they certainly are. By the soundest rules of construction, and should any complaint be made to a grand jury against any officer or officers, member or members of any Masonic lodge, right? So the grand jury is the Grand Masons. So when we go to court today, our court system is the fucking grand jury, right? We are all Masons already, right? We all live this Masonic fucking life, and none of us even know it. We don't even know it. What was the Masonic fucking motto? To make you a Mason without you even knowing it. Look at today. We all saw it's he's fucking blowing the whistle. He's a whistleblower in 1827. And we're almost exactly 200 years fucking later. This shit's got to stop, man. This shit has to fucking stop. We need a new anti-Masonic fucking revolution. A new anti-Masonic movement has to happen. We're done with these fucking Freemason freak shows that are killing babies, raping fucking kids, pizza fucking, yeah, we're done. In the United States of America, nothing is fucking happening to these people. Why? We are in a York and Scott fucking battle right now. That's why. Of any Masonic lodge for administering or receiving these oaths, they would be obliged by their oaths as jurors to indict the offenders. I will fortify this position by reference to a period of history in which a similar, if not the same question, in all its bearings, became the foundation of a series of statutes framed by our British ancestors to protect their civil and political rights. An imperium in imperio, in plain English, an empire within an empire, or a government within a government, a fucking theocracy, the Mormon Church. We are being warned about the goddamn Mormon Church. An imperium imperio, in plain English, an empire within an empire, a government within a government, the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church is a theocracy. Everybody knows that. He is talking about, on page 39, the Mormon Church. It is not to be tolerated, never can be safely tolerated by any sovereignty or people. But the institution whose oaths and obligations or laws are contradictory and in defiance of the municipal laws of the land is an emporium in imperio, imperium in imperio. To all intents and purposes, such is the Masonic institution. And it was to prevent such an independent and dangerous exercise of power within the realm of England that the statutes of Praemunire, Praemunire, look up that name, Praemunire, were called into existence. They were intended to suppress the civil power of the popes. Page 40. Over his adherents within the empire. Although the Roman Catholics had no secret assemblies, no secret ties or rites or mysteries or any kind calling upon them expressly or by implication or in any other shape to conceal the crimes of each other against the assumed civil authority of the popes or the legitimate civil supremacy of the British Constitution and constituted authorities. Do you understand? This is so political. This is 1827 politics right here, apostate congregation. Are you understanding that? It's fascinating. And you can Google all of this stuff and look it up. It's all legit. It's all there. You can Google all this stuff. It's all there. There are so many rabbit holes that me and you have no idea about any of it. And it's legit history, and it has all been covered up. All of this has been covered up. All of it. Let's keep going. The struggle between the Pope and the government for the exercise of civil power, precisely such as has been claimed by the exercise by the Freemasons in Morgan's case, so far as the case goes, agitated the British Empire through a number of successive reigns and proceeded and produced the most serious injuries to the peace and tranquility of the nations. Okay, so in 1827, what happened to the British Empire? Okay, well, the struggle between the Pope and the government for the exercise of civil power, precisely such as has been claimed by the exercise, claimed and exercised by the Freemasons. In Morgan's case, so far as the case goes, agitated the British Empire through a number of successive reigns. Okay, how many, and produced the most serious injuries to the peace and tranquility of the nation. So he's talking about the British Empire. What happened to Morgan caused a huge stir to the British Empire. Make no mistakes about it, apostate congregation. What is happening right now in 2026 is this battle continuing. We are against the fucking Yorks. This is America is the Scottish Rites. England is the York Rites. Either in a civil, wait, hold on, that's not what that says. Yeah, civil, either in a civil or ecclesiastical, however you say that fucking word, ecclesiastical shape, ecclesiastical, that's it, ecclesiastical shape, it kept the government in constant broils. Mormonism, 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 Mormonism. The early Mormon stories, listen to the early Mormon stories. And consequent terror and alarm from the reign of Henry the First, if no earlier, down to that of Henry the Eighth. So far was this imperium in imperio, government within the government, carried at one time, that Pope Innocent III demanded of John the resignation of his kingdom as St. Peter's patrimony. Oh, as St. Peter's patrimony. Right? There's a little bit of history for you, right? And his extravagant demand was acceded to, and the Pusillanimous, Pusillanimous M-O-U-S, Pusillanimus, Pusillanimus. I guess that's how you say that word. Pusillanimus, monarch, re-accepted his scepter from the hands of the papal legate to hold as the vessel of the holy see, of the holy see. At the annual rent of 1,000 marks, and I venture to predict that our government will yet be called upon by the grand kings and grand high priests of the Holy Order of St. John of Jerusalem to submit to similar outrages. The Holy Order of St. John of Jerusalem. Okay, now these are things that I want you to look up. Okay, the grand kings. Who are the grand kings and the grand high priests of the Holy Order of St. John's of Jerusalem? Okay, that's a lodge. That is a Masonic order. The Holy Order of St. John of Jerusalem. To submit to similar outrages. Okay, so Southwick is making a prediction right there. I'm going to say his prediction came true. I am going to say his prediction came true. What's happening with all the Zionist shit that's going on right now? The Holy Order of St. John is St. John of Jerusalem. I mean, it's all fucking Zionism. It's all Zionism. Look up that order. Look up that order. You'll be shocked. To submit to similar outrages if they be not checked in their career, but to return, although his procedures had tamely submitted to the popish imperio, right? The government within the government. Okay. Edward I had the patriotism and the spirit to make a bold and to a great extent effectual resistance. He treated the contempt and ridicule. He treated with contempt and ridicule all papal bulls and processes. He aimed the axe at the root of the evil. He executed one of his subjects as a traitor for having obtained a bull of excommunication against another. Pretty much such a bull as was lately issued by a Masonic lodge against Mr. Hollister. Write down that name, Mr. Hollister, Hollister, and family, in the 35th year of his reign, was made the first statute against his cuckoo sort of intrusion and interference with the civil laws and rights of the people. Cuckoo is italicized. This is Southwick. He's calling him a cuckoo. His cuckoo sort of intrusion and interference with the civil laws. You know, he's a basket case, and which formed the foundation of all the subsequent statutes of the Praemunire, Pramunire. Although the struggle was still carried on, yet the Pope was worsted from time to time till he was obliged to surrender altogether his claims to civil power. Right? So there's this Yeah, this is actually like legit history. You can Google this and look this shit up and read it. There's tons of work about it. Okay, so but the stories that me and you are told are different though. The anti-Masonic movement is nothing has been fucking altered yet. Nothing has been changed. Nothing, there's no scholarship. This is raw. This is legit raw material. This is written as it was because integrity was everything. These people are trying to sell their book, so it better be right, or that no one's going to buy it. Because people are reading, people read. And they know they were in the war, they know this stuff, right? Solomon Southwick was the most prolific writer on this stuff. And he was the first keynote speaker at the first anti-Masonic convention. Well, the only anti-Masonic convention. And notwithstanding, oh wait, hold on, where we go? Yeah. Okay, Popish supremacy. So he had to give up his spot, his civil power. The Pope had to give up his civil power. And finally, to that of ecclesiastical, the memory of Edward I should never be obliterated from the minds of Englishmen. He was justly called the founder as well as the restorer of their laws. And notwithstanding Popish supremacy, had acquired a more dangerous influence, if possible, over the minds of a vast portion of the people than Masonic supremacy. Then Masonic supremacy has as yet acquired among us. Yet, in the language of Blackstone, it vanished into nothing when the eyes of the people were a little expanded, and they set themselves with vigor to expose it, to oppose it. So vain and ridiculous is the attempt to live in a society without acknowledging the obligation which it lays us under, and to effect an entire independence of that civil state with which protects us in all our rights. And page 42, genius. What's our time? Okay, apostate congregation. I think we're going to stop there on page 42. We will start back up on page 42. And from here on out, we start getting real into it. We get into a lot of stuff. We get real deep. So stay with me. Thank you for subscribing. Everybody should subscribe. Like, this channel will never be monetized. So liking, subscribing, sharing, all that kind of good stuff. That's the only way you can support this channel. So please, we will never be monetized because we are here to speak truth. We have nothing to hide. There's no reason to lie about it. We're reading directly out of the book, congregation. So this is history. This is history. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, this is legit history, okay? So stay with me, congregation. Let's keep going. We got a few more, like this book, we're on page 42, and this book is 140, or whoa, 140 pages. It's 140 pages, and we are on page 42. So we're almost done. All right. Like, subscribe, share, hit the bell. I come on at random times, all that kind of stuff. So let's do it, congregation. Let's keep going. We need to bring this to attention to people. We need to bring this out because in 1827, they are literally warning us about today. So let's not miss the mark twice, okay? I don't know of anybody that's ever heard of this book other than the apostate congregation. I've never heard anybody ever talk about this book ever. And my entire life, have been heavy into the Masonic conspiracy theories, all that kind of bullshit stuff, right? And I've never once ever heard of this book until I started studying just more the Mormon history. And I came across this book and I was like, dude, what the fuck am I reading? What am I reading right now? So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. It is very, very important. This message gets out. We are not monetized. So it makes it that much harder to get the message out. So please, the only way that we can do that is by sharing, subscribing, liking, commenting, all that fun stuff. Thank you, Apostate Congregation. There's an ambulance going by right now. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm sure you can. It's loud as shit. 1 second. We're sounding the alarm bells, baby. We're sounding the alarm bells. We need a new anti-Masonic movement. The Church of Masonry, the Mormon Church is here. The Epstein Files. The Epstein Files. I really hope you guys could hear that siren in the background. Like, all right. Thank you, congregation. We will, in the words of the late, great Solomon Southwick, the ghost of Morgan will rise again. And here we are, congregation. Here we are. We'll see you on the other side.